Hey guys, it's your friendly neighborhood reviewer with inToit Reviews. So let's talk about the Bravo Audio Ocean. This thing is a bit of a gem in my book, especially with certain headphones, and we'll get into those. While it may not be the ideal match for every headphone out there, and definitely not for sensitive IEMs, with the right setup, this amp truly does shine. So let's get into it. So let's get the negatives out of the way first then. To start with, this thing doesn't have the lowest noise floor in the world. While it does have 1/4 inch and 3.5mm jacks on its front face, I would say that this particular amp should mostly be used with headphones. Why do you ask? Well, because IEMs tend to be more sensitive, and with sensitive IEMs, the Ocean does emit a low volume hiss when music is not playing through it. While it is hard to discern any interference when music is playing, it is something I need to let you know about as a reviewer. However, on less sensitive units, which would include most of the headphones I tested, I did not hear a hiss. Additionally, this thing has a tube-free and a Class A circuit. This means it does get hot and sounds better when warm. In other words, it benefits from being turned on for at least 10 to 15 minutes before use. Patience is a virtue here, but I also fully understand that some people may not want to wait for the magic. While it does produce signal after only about 20 seconds of warm-up, I wouldn't expect it to sound its best from the moment you flip the switch on. Further, the tube pre on the top is encased by a roll bar-like structure that is built into the case itself. So the case has to be fully disassembled in order to experiment with tube rolling, if that's what you'd like to do. I can see this being a deal breaker for those that are dedicated to finding the perfect tube for their preferences. It would take a fair amount of time and work to disassemble and reassemble things over and over again to find the particular tube that suits your preferences. I should also note that all comments and conclusions drawn here are in reference to the stock tubes, as I did not take the extra time to take this unit apart and tube roll here. On a side note, there's also a red LED on the front, which lets you know that the unit is on and receiving power. It is a bit piercing to the eyes and brighter than it needs to be in my opinion. It also stays illuminated until the tubes cool down and does not shut off immediately when the unit is switched off. There is also a slight channel imbalance to the left side at lower volumes as well, but the knob turns smoothly and fluidly with a satisfying amount of resistance. I could not find the exact power ratings listed anywhere online, but there is a lot of power under the hood. So much so that on my set of 99 noirs, which are relatively sensitive, I was able to get beyond normal listening levels even when just bringing the channels into balance. If using this amplifier with more sensitive cans, I might recommend using a passive preamp in the chain, such as the JDS Labs UL switcher, to give you a better control over volume adjustments. The back of the unit is also rather interesting. In addition to the plug for the 24-volt power brick, it has a 3.5mm input, a set of RCA inputs, and a set of RCA outputs if you'd like to use this unit as a pre-tube buffer for another amplifier for speakers or headphones. In other words, it can be used as a preamp or variable volume control. In my setup, I have my Ocean next to the Gisele Labs Arcle Pro, which also has 2 inputs, so I can feed the Ocean into the Arcle Pro to darken the tone of that amp and add a variable amount of tube effect to it if I wish. The Arcle Pro and the Ocean make for a unique pairing of single-ended amps in this way. One last thing to note is that the amp itself did not come with plastic feet, which is an oversight by Bravo considering the heat generated by this thing. But I was able to find some cabinet stops laying around that worked out quite nicely. So let's talk about sets that worked well with the Ocean and those that don't. With headphones that don't work well, this amp mostly either comes across as somewhat pedestrian or the noise floor causes issues. For example, this isn't my favorite amplifier with my Sennheiser 6XXs. It doesn't sound bad, it just kind of sounds flat. With regard to noise floor issues, this was mostly apparent with sensitive IEMs, so I'd mostly recommend staying clear of IEMs with this particular amplifier. However, there are and will be some exceptions, but I'll save those for future videos. One pairing that I do not recommend with this amp is the Master & Dynamics MH40. In general, I urge you to stay away from sets that may already have overly warm profiles to them. Conversely, something like a KSC75 does particularly well with this amp, as it tends to tame the treble quite a bit. When I was listening to Nobody's Fault But Mine by Led Zeppelin in testing, this amp made the sharp bits tolerable, while this song tended to sound somewhat shrill on nearly everything else that I tested. This amp also seems to excel with planars for some reason, perhaps because it's rather powerful for what it is. Again, I could not find exact power specs, but it is powerful enough to drive any headphone in my arsenal quite well. For example, this is my amp of choice for relaxation with my Mark II Argons. In testing, the Bravo Ocean had more than enough power to power my set of Mark II Argons to their full potential. This is particularly amazing considering its price point at around only $80. This amp is also a special pairing with the Hi-Fi Man HE4XX. With the 4XX, this sounds better than any amp pairing that I've heard with it to date. It just sounds right. I have a 789 sitting less than 3 feet away, and I use this thing almost exclusively with the 4XX instead. Why do you ask? Because it sounds that damn good. It is leaps and bounds above anything else I've ever heard with the 4XX. Other synergistic pairings for this amp would be the Meze 99 Noirs and the Emu Purple Hearts with my recommended Meze 99 pad adjustments. See my prior video on the Purple Hearts regarding this particular pad adjustment. One thing to note is that the Ocean may not be as resolving as some others might like, particularly in the lower register. I noticed this on my set of Argons and the 1770X Go from Beyerdynamic. While I really like the overall presentation with both of these sets, it does lack some micro details that you might get with some other amps, and I might say that it has an overall slight wooliness to the presentation with some sets, but the bass is never bloated or boomy. Quite the opposite. I'd say overall that the bass response is mildly pushed to the background and somewhat softer than other amps. If I was being overly critical, I might say it is mildly muddy and recessed in the lower register, but I don't want to be that critical here, because the effect is minute and the amp still sounds good overall, producing a warmer, more relaxing sound signature here instead. In preparation for this review, I was surprised to note that the vocals were consistently forward between sets, separation was good, and the amp was more spacious than I had remembered. Overall, it won't be a blanket recommendation for everything and for everyone, but with certain pairings, this thing is amazing. I would not recommend it as a main amp in most scenarios because the noise floor isn't fabulous. However, if your main headphone is the 4XX, just buy this thing now. It will save you cash, and it is my recommended amp for that set. It is also a good pairing for Argons, and it produces more than enough power to power this set correctly, which is a rare occurrence at this price point. Furthermore, I'd recommend this amp as a secondary amp for someone with multiple headphones and/or amps already in their arsenal. Just a reminder, I'm doing a giveaway starting at the 500 subscriber mark. I'll be giving away a set of COS KSC 75s. All you have to do to be considered for the giveaway is be subscribed to this channel. So go ahead and hit that subscription button now if you haven't done so already. Also consider clicking that bell, that way you'll get notified when I upload future videos. And I'm out.